Welcome to the Parent Advocate Podcast, a show where we celebrate, defend, support, and uplift the voices of the LGBTQIA community. I'm your host, Stephen Chikumba. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Lisette Trujillo.
Hi, everyone. Lisette here, she, her, ella. The mission of the Parent Advocate Podcast is to elevate conversations and reframe narratives around trans and non-binary youth to help change hearts and minds. Each week, we bring you our take on all things happening from the perspective of two parents of BIPOC transgender kids.
Lisette, I just have to tell you that I so enjoyed our conversation last week, that kind of unstructured style. And I feel like we shouldn't be so regimented. And if you're okay, I feel like this is just how we get down. And if we have a guest, we have a guest. But I just really enjoyed the free flowing conversation and the way we freestyled that I want to do that from now on.
Steven, I'm 1,000% in. I say we just talk, but what does our third producer think?
Well, I haven't even talked to him. Oh, no, wait. So he said he loved the episode. He loved the episode. He did. He said he loved the episode. So because he said he loved the episode, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to just continue to do what he loved. And we're going to keep doing this.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. So welcome, everyone, once again to the Parent Advocate Podcast. Let's get started. Lisette, I have to tell you that it has been quite the week. It has been quite the week. So much stuff has happened that I'm just like, okay, I don't even know necessarily how to make heads or tails of it. And I know last week I said like things are weird, but like I feel like, and I think you even said it, like we're living in like an alternate timeline where people's behavior is not what you would expect. And I'm saying like just on a regular day, you would get just a fire hose of information coming out of this administration of just pure unadulterated fuckery. It's been very quiet this week.
Except for the trash bags being thrown out of the White House window. I mean, you're right. Everyone was like, what is happening?
What's happening? And of course, many have speculated that this fool is at death's door. People are praying that it's true because of how horrible things have been since this particular occupant of the Oval Office has been there. And so, like, I don't wish death upon people. That's just not who I am. But I am familiar with many people who have silently and not so silently been like, yeah, I hope this is it. Now, I am abundantly familiar with the fact that number two is not much better than number one. And so we would be trading one evil despot for a younger, probably equally evil despot who's like being groomed to take over. So it's like while people are like crossing their fingers and genuflecting and doing all the things in the hopes that the demise of the person who shall remain unnamed is imminent, it doesn't necessarily bode well for anyone were that to be the case, because the blueprint's still the blueprint. The plan is still going to be followed to the letter. It's just this idiot won't be the one leading the charge.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also wondering if people feel or believe that it might feel less chaotic with the number two, right?
It will.
I think that that's might be the motivation behind their wishing and dreaming. But I mean, I don't know. It's terrifying either way.
Yes, it's terrifying either way. And I think the absence of chaos may actually make it worse.
I mean, yes,
Like,
the efficiency would be scary.
exactly. That's one of the things that we don't have right now is efficiency of cruelty. I think efficiency of cruelty is what will happen in the absence of this idiot.
What are you hearing? Because it was a quieter week. Quieter is relative, right? Because we still saw like Trump's latest executive order around attacking terrorist groups on foreign soil has gone into effect. They obviously bombed a boat off the coast of Venezuela. So we know that there are things happening, but the chaos demon was not in his full form this week.
Not in his prime.
What are you hearing from people like around you? Did they feel relief? Did they feel like, okay, we can get through this?
So it's interesting because there have been a number of decisions that have come down that have been really, I'm going to say, forceful in their rebuke of this administration and some of the things that they've been trying to do, especially as it relates to the unconstitutional use of the military on domestic soil. And so people are saying out loud, he is trying to foment war to be able to suspend elections. Like they're saying the words out loud. And in that kind of realization, it becomes apparent to anyone paying attention that these are all part and parcel of this plan to ensure that what we all know to be the results of this upcoming midterm election were to be allowed to play out without interference, what it would be. Because people are hurting, people are scared, people are losing money, losing work, losing benefits. People didn't think about how this big, beautiful bill was going to affect them until it started to affect them. And so I think that what he knows is going to be the referendum of his administration come midterms. He is trying to forestall those results. And so a lot of what the conversations have been around fuck around and find out, and how that mindset is going to play itself out as these elections come up. Like Labor Day here, huge protests because people are like, they're fed up. They're really, really fed up. Now, that's kind of just the larger attitude that's pretty pervasive today in lots of pockets. Like you're seeing so many more Republicans, even MAGA Republicans, realizing they've been hoodwinked and saying it out loud. And so I think that that's a lot of what I'm seeing just in the public sphere. Privately, folks are still panicking. Folks are not breathing sighs of relief because he may be meeting his imminent demise, because the policies are still in place. And in fact, there are decisions coming down in different states that are not favorable to gender expansive people. So it's not like things have gotten any better necessarily. Things are the same as, or in certain pockets, worse. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing. That's kind of what kind of conversations around me have been. What are you hearing? Because again, I'm always curious to know, in your neck of the woods, even though you're not here, you're still paying attention. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are people reaching out to you for? Because you're still in support spaces. You're still doing the damn thing. Like what's happening on your side?
Stephen, the chaos demon is impacting us all the way out here. So the last 2 days, we haven't been able to mail anything to the US because of Trump's tariffs. Most of the EU is like, we need time to figure out how to deal with this. And so it's been changing every day. Luckily, we can still send out via FedEx or UPS, or there's other modes of mail. But it's been interesting to hear the frustration from people. They live in other parts of the world and they're like, what is happening to your nation? Like, what is happening to your nation? I think it's also really interesting to get messages from people who maybe are going into other support spaces that aren't ones where I have facilitated or facilitate. And they're like, wow, like parents are not grasping the moment. They're still talking about their feelings and if they are going to ever come to terms with supporting their kid in the midst of political targeted oppression of their children. And so it's really interesting to hear people who are like, the time of a political sentiment is sort of over because we're all being impacted in real material ways, and it's scary for our children. So it's been interesting to hear like people saying like, we're out of time. Like we have to be more forceful in approach. We have to be more creative in approach. It's due time, go time. That's what I'm hearing from people. And I'm also hearing people say that they're really afraid of what is going to happen next, because Project 2025 is like 80% rolled out in the last, 9 months of him being in power. And so what does that mean as we move into the holidays, into fall, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, in terms of democracy and the safety and well-being of our loved ones. And so I think people are feeling scared. I feel scared. The other day, I was up all night. Like I was like, I'm tired. And I went to sleep for an hour and a half and then I was up. I was up until 7 a.m. just like doom scrolling on, my still very American Instagram and being just terrified of what the future holds. And then I had to just really sit with myself and be like, okay, what do I want to hold hope for? And I think that's why I loved our conversation last week, because we were being joyous in a time that feels really scary, and feeling connection. And so yeah, I had to like recenter myself and be like, okay, there's a reality that the world is on fire, and also to like, we're safe, we're okay right now, and like, how can I hope like forward in this moment?
No, that I think that's absolutely necessary, because that's, I think, the antidote to much of which ails us right now, is to maintain that optimism that, notwithstanding the darkness of the current times and the difficulty that we're experiencing, that there is a brighter future. There is a brighter tomorrow than the today that we're currently living in. And I think that that's kind of what we've got to do. Like, so I'll share with you this story. I had a barbecue cookout the other day, this weekend actually, and all the kids were here, had my mom here, had some friends come in from New York. It was just a very nice day, doing my host with the most thing. And Hobbs was coming home from school, and like his phone died. And so his phone died. Asha went to the train station to pick him up. She came back, no Hobbs. And she was just like, yeah, he said he was taking this train at this time. And he said if he missed the train, he would catch the next train, whatever. And so as she's explaining it to me, I was like, okay, well, what time was he supposed to get in? And so she gave me the time, and it was like 45 minutes after the time. And I'm thinking, like, that's not like him. And I had this momentary panic attack. I was really concerned. I was really concerned, just because I'm like, the climate is what it is. And even though I'm not out in these streets worrying about my kid, I'm just not, that's just not who I am. But in that moment, I had just a bad feeling, and I needed to like make it not feel bad. And so like I went inside and I took Asha inside, and I made her like run down everything that was happening. Like, what time did he say was going to come in? What time is the train supposed to be? What time is the next train? What's the train after that? What time is? I sent them back to the train station, and I was like, you will go there and you will wait for him. And then an hour later, when they came back, he was with them. But that feeling that I had in that moment is what I suspect a lot of people are feeling. Like that fear that you don't have control over what's about to happen, and you can't forecast what's happening, and you do all the things you can do to kind of talk yourself off the ledge. But when that feeling hits, it's very difficult to get rid of it. So like, I know when you're talking about like sitting there at night, unable to sleep, doom scrolling, and all of this bad stuff, like I had a moment of that, and I forced it away. Like I forced myself to ground myself, because that emotion, that feeling, that sensation is not something we can allow to sit with us. We must push the bad off of us. We must actively take control of our minds, center ourselves, breathe through the difficulty, because that's what the moment requires in order for us to be here and be present for our children, and to be here for the community that doesn't have people like us fighting for them. Like, we cannot ever give into the darkness. We cannot ever give into that sensation like all is lost, just because then what are we doing? Like, what's the point of all of this if we allow that sensation of the feeling, or for them to win? Because again, I think the strategy is to break us. Cruelty and chaos is the point, and they're only winning if we let them. And I'm not that dude. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I was talking to Daniel the other day, because I was telling him that I went to the post office and I was trying to mail some stuff out, and they were like, we're not mailing to the US today. And my stomach fell out of my butt. Like, I was so pressed. And then they were like, well, wait, we are, but it has to be these qualifications. And we met the qualifications. I got the packages out. And I was telling Daniel, that was the first time where like, I was like, I can't go home yet. And I don't want to go home yet. And we have to make this work. So how do we make this moment work where we're living, where we are? And I was telling Daniel, for the last 5 months, I've been trying to be present. I've been doing all this advocacy work, working on projects, doing things, but there's been so much grief and loss around what we've left behind. And I was telling Daniel that was the first moment where I was like, but we're safe. Like, I had known it anecdotally, right? But and I was like, yes, we're safe. I'm glad we're safe. Our family was like, but you're safe. Or people would say, but you're safe. But all I kept thinking was, we've been forced into this decision, and I'm angry and I'm sad and I feel grief. And I was telling Daniel, it was the first time that I was like, no, but like that I knew it in my body and I didn't want to let that safety go. And it just reminded me of this quote by Octavia Butler that says, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And I think that the chaos demon puts us in this space where we're like, I have to control my surroundings because I feel so deeply unsafe. And when I thought of her words, I thought to myself, change is inevitable and it's deeply uncomfortable. And change is hardship, and change could be growth, and change could be success and abundance. It can look like all these things. So how do we allow for change to occur and for us to affect change in a way that creates good in the world, you know? And that's what
Yes.
I'm hearing for you. Like, you were panicked about Hobbs showing up and like that loss of control of safety. And yet you're doing everything you do to affect change for the better. And so, like, how do we move through this world knowing that, like, we can't predict it all, but we can do the best that we can?
Yeah. And we can't control everything. Like that's the part that I was just like, all right, the little parts that I can control of this situation are assessing how much of this information warrants my worry versus me just like accepting that, okay, this is a kid who allowed his phone to die, who because of that created, confusion about when he was going to show up. His sister isn't the most patient and wasn't willing to wait for the next train to come in and all these things. And so like once I started like unpacking what was happening and talking myself off the edge, it became like, okay, at the end of the day, there's only so much we can control. That's just a fact of life. There's only so much we can control. And so we shouldn't try to control everything. And sometimes it's just like let go and let God, like I didn't really think anything really untoward had happened. And so I just had to sit with that. Like, okay, well, that's what I think. And so just let go. Like stop tripping. You send it back to the train station. You got a house full of people. You're cooking on the grill. Like just let go and let God. And again, everything worked out. And that's the good part of the story. But I definitely want to acknowledge that even this, ridiculously positive, optimistic person has those moments. And it's a natural thing to have those moments. I don't think it's a natural thing to stay in those moments. And I want to make sure that parents who are listening and people who are listening understand that sometimes you're going to have those just misgivings, those dark feelings and emotions. It's important to feel them. It's important not to just sit in them.
And I think as a parent, regardless of whether you're a parent of a trans child or a parent of a kid of color, or an immigrant child, like we feel afraid for our children existing in the world without us. Like, I mean, that's just such a reality that we're like afraid, like that we don't want anything to happen to them. And so adding the political discourse, the chaos, the uncertainty just like exacerbates that. And I think as
Yeah.
parents, we gotta take deep breaths. What's
Yes.
funny, and I don't remember if I shared it last week, but Daniel's phone was stolen last week. Did I
You
share
told
that
us.
last week?
But you just said he was trying to make some content and somebody rolled up on him, took his phone, but
Took his
that was
phone.
it.
And like the whole time, Daniel was like panicked that I was watching him on Life 360 and worried about where he was going. But on the Life 360, the phone showed that he was in the same spot for an hour. So an hour rolls by and he like races into the studio and he's like, my phone was stolen. And I'm like, Daniel, I've been kicking it like worry free. I thought you were still at the park. Like, you know what I mean? So like it doesn't matter what sort of protective measures we put in place, like lives.
Life, lives.
And so yeah, like I was like, Daniel, I would never have thought something was wrong because I'm like, he's at the park. He's where he says he is, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a crazy story. And good for him for being so conscious about not worrying you. Like, good on Daniel for like worrying about his mom, being concerned about him being okay.
I think he was like, you suck as a mom because how did you not notice that I
Okay,
didn't
so
move for an
that's the flip
hour?
side. That's definitely the flip side of his being concerned was finding out that you were none the wiser. But that's not your fault. That's his phone's fault.
I was like, I thought Life for 360 was being honest. I didn't know.
Right. It was lying
but
on you.
but I mean, like, I think this brings up a good conversation, and I think it's really important, and I think we should share it with this next episode. But there are safety measures that parents can take in this moment as they prepare for whatever might happen. A good friend of ours and parent advocate, Debbie Jackson, put out a really helpful PDF that's like a step by step of what parents can do and how to kind of think ahead or prepare. And I think that we should make that link available when we share this next episode, because it's better to be prepared and have nothing bad happen than to be caught off guard.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because we have in this space as advocates of gender expansive children consistently taken those courses and had those conversations about safety. Safety being public, using your real name versus a pseudonym, having your children, their names, their images out, being really mindful of what you post online and in social media, having delete me accounts. Like all of these things are things that we have to do, have to be mindful of, have to be cognizant of, because there are just some batshit crazy people out in the world who mean people who are just advocating on behalf of their children and their children harm just because.
Yeah. Yeah. That's real. That's real. We were talking about that today. I spent the day with other immigrants who have come from the US and work within the same advocacy space that we are, but they were clinicians and came from a medical background. And we were talking about how we saw this coming, and it didn't matter how prepared we were. It came, and we are all grappling with what that means and how to move forward. And I will say that, like, what was really wonderful about the entire day is that we're all contributing in different ways still and finding ways to support people in this moment. And I think that's what makes community special. That's what makes connection important. And it's a reminder of that, like, hope. Like, we can cry, or we can hold feelings, we can be scared, we can be nervous. And then, like, what do we do to still care for each other?
Yeah, I got an email the other day from a father who was looking for help for another father. This other father lost their child to suicide. Trans daughter, for all intents and purposes, was doing really well in school. And again, this story is being related by the guy looking for the referral for the dad who experienced this. And he said, is there a support group for parents who have lost their children to suicide? And I was like, of course, there's support groups for parents who've lost children to suicide, but not specifically for parents of gender expansive children who've lost their kids to suicide, because oftentimes those are the children that are taking their own lives. And it's not to say that that's all you're going to find, but there isn't like a niche group that I knew that I could share with him, because I was just like, A, I'm so sorry that happened. B, he just needs support. And C, I think he'll find in those support spaces that the stories of those families are going to be very similar to his own. And without like saying it like that, that's what I think is going to happen. But it really had me thinking about, we don't often, thank God, we don't often hear about that side of it this close. We hear about it as a statistic, as something that the Trevor Project shares with us, or National Suicide Prevention Hotline share with us, or reports from HRC shares with us. And we see the statistics, but we don't know the people necessarily, and we don't have such proximity to them. And so it made it very real to me that we are doing life-saving work because we're helping families not experience that. And again, I don't know the specifics of his family. I do know that they were caught off guard. And I'm like, you can't be, honestly, if you're the parent of a gender expansive child, if you're the parent of a trans child today in this country, it is impossible to believe that it's completely not a possibility for something untoward to happen to your child like that. Because I know that even when we're checking in, this world is horrible to our children. It's absolutely horrible to our children. And as much affirmation and support as we are giving them, there is no saying how much more of an impact the horrible world has on them. There's no way to say. And so it's like, I want to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to create a counter narrative and to create a world where there's more positivity around them than negativity, such that they never consider taking their own lives as a real way out of suffering.
Those were the hardest calls for me, Stephen, when I would get calls from parents whose children were in crisis. And luckily, their attempts were unsuccessful. Those were the hardest, I think, phone calls, and I think debilitating, because these parents want to believe that they're doing everything that they can. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not, right? And so I think the support that parents need is like, how do we make you safe so that your child trusts that they are safe?
Right.
And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to hear parents who have experienced loss. I mean, I really hope that that father's able to connect with you and feel like he has people to rely on in this moment, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that. That would be. I've told Jose, I don't know if I would survive that. Talk about like the moment that we're in where kids are actually feeling so much pain around like what they're hearing in the world about them and their existence. And so we have to do everything that we can to create resources, to create spaces of connection. And so Daniel runs a youth space for the gender liberation movement. And the conversations that they are having with each other are really beautiful. Like I'm deeply moved by the ways in which they are talking about empowering each other, the way they're trying to connect to their history as trans people, the ways in which, even in the midst of like anti trans rhetoric, they're like, how do we ensure that we do not carry internalized transphobia or shame? Like, how do we live in a world where we embody ourselves fully and we feel joy about who we are? That would be rare. Like if I were their age, I might not have the capacity to be like, how do I be my full self in the world? I would probably be like terrified. And I think our kids are these really incredible gifts and they feel a lot because they see the world in such a distinct way. And I don't know, where I feel like first of all, I'm glad Hobbs was okay and that he just missed the train and could have like a teenage moment where you're like, dude, pay attention, charge your phone, have
Charge
some,
your phone, dude.
charge your phone, be
Simple.
an adult, be responsible. And also that he had the ability to have that moment and feel safe and know that he was going to make it home. Where
Yeah.
like so many people are grappling with like loss and what it's a moment. I don't even have words for it. Did the
So
dad connect with you all?
So no, this is like real time just happened like a few days ago. I just got the email and I'm scouring to try to find resource because my first response was like there are grief counseling organizations that specifically deal with helping families cope with the loss of a child to suicide. So that was my first thing. I was like, that's front and center. And I don't know that there exists a specific, because again, when we're talking about trans people and their families, it's a very small subset of our society. And then when you talk about trans people and their families who've lost their children, it's an even smaller subset of people. So to find a support group for trans people is very difficult. Like, that was the first difficulty that I experienced when my son shared his identity with me, is finding other people who had my experience. And then within that subset, to find people who've lost their children, like that's an even smaller group of people. So I didn't have a direct response to him in that moment. And so I was just looking for help, for resources for him. And so my first response was just like, yeah, like let's connect with me, but I don't have anything specific for that thing he's looking for, but I would love to talk to him about like how to help him through that.
And the assumption would be too is that they might not be affirming and not need connection, right? Like that would be the assumption too. And so it's wonderful that this parent is seeking connection
Right.
and trying to make sense and heal, which I would imagine would be so difficult.
Yeah. I mean, you said something earlier that it literally kind of gave me goosebumps about getting that call from a family in crisis, because we've gotten those calls and it is one of those like, oh my God, I know you. I know your child. This is terrible. And suspending that to support them in the moment that they need, because it's not about you in that moment. It's like, how do I help this person in crisis get the help that they need? Let me assess what it is that's happening so that I can direct them to the right place and make sure that they feel grounded in the moment, notwithstanding this just catastrophic thing that's happening. Because it's just frightening to hear somebody that you know speaking about their child in a way that makes them fearful for their child's life. It's just a horrible, horrible thing. And it takes me back to Dennis and Judy Shepard learning about what happened to Matthew Shepard and going to the hospital. It is just, it's one of those things that I cannot shake because it's a parent's worst nightmare. And it's something that you don't put active thought behind, but lingering somewhere in the back of your psyche is that thing. And so when someone calls you and says that their child is in crisis, even if it has nothing to do with like someone physically harming them or them being, something untoward happening, but them being in crisis because of just the mental challenges that come along with being a gender expansive person, it's still just, it's just so disconcerting.
And now parents have to weigh whether they should call an intake facility because of the Trump administration's executive order that would possibly allow them to be kept in a mental facility until forever, right? And so, how do you get parent support and get their kids the support and the care that they need when the federal government is saying, and BTW, we can hold you forever if
Yeah.
you have this mental diagnosis, or if we deem you an unsafe person to go back out into the world. It's a horrible time to be a parent and be faced with so many challenges.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
impossible, but the stakes feel higher.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely do. And, I know I've taken us down this dark place, but not to be dark, but to kind of provide folks with the reality of what's happening to families like ours. There are things that we have to contend with day in and day out that most people don't ever think about and don't put a lot of thought to, which is why people need to be empathetic. People need to kind of expand their worldview to take in different experiences to inform their own. We can't have people thinking that this doesn't affect me, and so I'm not going to pay any attention to it. This doesn't affect me, so I don't care. This doesn't affect me, so meh. It all affects all of us. We are connected. The human species is a social species, and we are connected through our connections. We are connected by how we relate and interact with one another. And what happens to the least of us happens to all of us. And we need to start thinking and acting like that. It is because we thought it was us versus them that we're in the situation that we're in today. It's all of us together. We are all experiencing this chaos. It's not just a few of us, it's all of us, except for perhaps the most wealthy 1% of the world who just, is blissfully unaware and actually is creating the chaos that we're all experiencing, if we're being honest. But we are all in this fucking thing together. So we all need to be thinking about, how do we help one another through these difficult times? How do we make sure that we show up for one another when we are needed? How do we make sure that we don't turn a blind eye? I was listening to this priest, maybe he was a pastor. He was a person of the cloth. And he was saying essentially that, for all the people who call themselves Christian, all the people who believe in Jesus and worship God and all these other things, he was like, what do you think Jesus will say when he sees you standing at the pearly gates and you're asking to come in? He's going to say, did you feed the hungry? Did you shelter the homeless? Did you visit the criminal? Did you tend to the sick? You didn't do any of those things. And in not feeding the hungry, you didn't feed me. In not tending to the sick, you didn't tend to me. In not visiting the incarcerated, you didn't visit me. In not sheltering the homeless, you didn't shelter me. And so, yeah, you're not going to earn this. You're not going to earn these pearly gates, this kingdom of heaven. And it was deep. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it was really deep because the expectation is that we are not in this thing called life for self-aggrandizement, just to make ourselves feel better. We're here to make sure that everyone around us is okay. That's what we should be doing. And so for those of us who are walking through life like, it's all about me, you've missed the assignment. And it's important that we get as many people to wake up out of their fog as possible to recognize that, again, you got to look out for the least of us if you're really intent on living in this society and doing good by one another.
1000%. It takes me back to the Octavia Butler quote around God being change. And this moment is going to require us to change how we see the world. And honestly, us having gender expansive kids forced us to change as humans in a way that we might not have been forced to do. And
Yep.
so what you're saying is beautiful, and it's a good place to end this conversation because we got to get to allies and assholes.
So, Lisette, I know we're not using our standard show format, but I definitely want to talk about the people at Union Station who heckled JD Vance and Stephen Miller.
They really were doing God's work.
They were doing the Lord's work. And I especially want to shout out the one dude who called that dude the couch fucker. I know it's not real, but he gave me life.
I mean, anyone who's willing to just troll Stephen Miller and JD Vance is my hero in this moment.
And so that person is our ally of the week. But I also want to talk about the one person who, and it's funny because before we started, I literally got an alert for Rokana. Is that his name? Rokana is a Democratic congressman who, I thought was an ally of LGBTQ plus people. But this fool was recently defending an anti-trans activist from the UK, Graham Linehan, who is like one of the worst people when it comes to attacking LGBTQ plus people. He's like the bottom of the barrel, like a knuckle dragging Neanderthal type of asshole. And Rokana decides that this is the person that he is supporting because this guy should have a right to free speech. Now, mind you, Graham Linehan was advocating violence, actively going out and harming trans people for being trans. This is what he was tweeting to his followers, that they should go and fuck up trans people. And Rokana decides that this is the guy that he wants to defend his First Amendment right. I'm sorry, the First Amendment does not allow you to incite violence. So not only are you repping some dude who's a pure piece of shit, but you're also not doing your constitutional duty of upholding the Constitution by suggesting that someone who is planning on fomenting violence has a First Amendment right.
That part. That makes me so angry. I mean, this is the problem, is that we are seeing Democratic leaders fold like chairs. And not in the good way where we saw that white chair be used for good a few years ago. They're just folding. And it's disappointing because we saw so much progress in the last decade, only to have Democratic leaders care more about votes and what they feel is culturally appropriate and not leading us into a future where all Americans are safe. It's disappointing and frustrating.
Absolutely. And it's like, I could go on and on with the list of people who've disappointed me recently, like Pete Buttigieg. Like, honestly, we've got to consider that maybe things aren't fair. You sound like Gavin Newsom, who prior to this was a pretty good ally. Like, there's so many people who've been making space for the other side to consider, well, maybe we should be like, no, motherfucker, we shouldn't. No, motherfucker, we shouldn't. What we should be doing is making sure that the least among us are safe, have access, are included, are protected, aren't discriminated against. That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be piling on to them now, of all times where you could be saying, oh, well, maybe we should consider, is this the time when the
No.
federal government is pulling safety nets from trans people, when state after state after state is criminalizing trans people? This is the time you think, oh, maybe we should be thinking about fairness to women in sports. Shut the fuck up.
I mean, I never forgot and or forgave for his comments on inner cities, but
again, like, he's not my favorite
thing.
person. He's not going to be my favorite person, but at the same time, he was doing some good work. So, you know what I mean? And it's like, the devil, damn, even the fucking devils we know are like flipping the script on us.
But wait, can we also talk about Malcolm Gladwell? Because
That was the
when you messaged me, I was like, yes, no, he is an asshole and our number one asshole of the week. Because how can you say that you are ashamed and that you felt forced into writing or to co-signing support for trans women and trans women athletes? Like, how do you flip so quickly? How do you fold so quickly, right? Like, it's upsetting to see, and also not surprising, by these people who said they were leaders only to fold to fascism. They're not the leaders we need.
They're not the leaders we
They're the
need.
cultural icons we need and or thought leaders at all.
At all. Well, that's our show for today, folks. I gotta give it up to my incredible co-host for allowing us to just freestyle and just get a lot of this stuff off our chest. I don't know what this show would be without you, and so I'm so grateful that we get to do this every week.
Steven, I'm so excited about our new format, and I can't wait to do this again next week. You know that I couldn't do this podcast without you, and we couldn't do this without all of you, our listeners. And so thank you for tuning in to the Parent Advocate Podcast.
Folks, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and do everything you've got to do to stay up to date with everything going on here at the Parent Advocate Podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.